From the glossary. Bardo. The intermediary stage between incarnations. At a certain point before your physical death, you enter into the Bardo sequence, in which the subtler layers of your aura begin a process of disengagement from the lower three bodies: physical, astral, mental. This sequence leads to physical death, but also continues after death. In the Bardo stages after death, our subtle bodies move through a series of alchemical distillation in which the low-frequency material that we've collected throughout our incarnation is separated from the high-frequency essence. The continuity of the Bardo cycles and their sequences interconnect our many lifetimes until we transcend human evolution at the sixth initiation. This is interesting. That continuity of the sequences of the bardos. And a bardo, so it is a state that we pass into between lifetimes. But in one sense, life itself is a bardo because it's also a transitional state. You know, seen from a higher viewpoint, life is a transition through learning, through an illusion, through a delusionary field. So in that sense, it is also a bardo. So the bardos never end until we escape and our true consciousness dawns. At low levels of frequency, human awareness is confined to the human body. That's what we think we are. We think we are this. That's the low frequency. And physical awareness remains rooted in survival and fear. Emotional awareness in desire and drama. And mental awareness in comparison and judgment. And then, I've jumped definitions there. I've gone into awareness. It's quite nice, actually. So in the Bardo stages after death, our subtle bodies move through a series of, distillation, and this is a real key that the separation of the lower frequencies from the higher. The distillation, so that the essence rises up. And the essence of all our goodness, of all our good acts, of all that is pure in our nature, of all the good words and deeds and all of that, is retained. And it's retained in the causal body, which is the one that survives death, the body of light. And then everything else, the desires that we've had, all of our, all the things that you could read in the aura that are stored as memory signatures in light, all the negativity, the shadow stuff, it drops down to the bottom layers, back to its plane. So the physical essence, as we know, just returns to the earth. The physical body, the flesh, the bone, it just decays and becomes the earth, the physical matter. But that's the same law on the other planes as well. So the emotional flesh that we've built up during a lifetime is released and dissipates onto the emotional plane. So what kind of emotional life you have had determines your experience in the bardos. So if you have had a very fraught, victim-like drama of an emotional life, then those desire forms, those egregores, if you like, of them are kind of emotional, almost sub-beings that we have created, and they drift off into the astral plane, where they dissipate. Or if they're very strong, they collect together with other egregores and form astral entities, if you like. At the higher Buddhic planes, every pure thought that we've had, every pure feeling, every rarefied one, it forms the Buddhic body, and that also has a relative existence. So there's this separating out of our being, and then that's what creates the karma, the kind of the scales that weigh what we've created through that lifetime, both the negative and the positive, both the high frequency and the low frequency, determines our next vehicle, determines our karma. The sanskaras, these memory slates that we've created. So all of that, it's rather magical, isn't it? Because how could you possibly conceive of all that being somehow orchestrated? But that's the miracle of the balancing of the cosmos. In order for and these are the subtle planes which we can't see normally, but the same laws, on the physical plane are applied on all the planes. This sifting and balancing. System of alchemy. There was one other thing. The Bardo stages between life and death. So when someone is dying, this disengagement happens before they die often, unless they die suddenly. And you can see sometimes the mind starts to disengage, the body starts to, especially in old age, things begin to detach and let go. And the separation begins to occur. The memory goes a bit, the physical, the mental connection to the life. In some instances, it's unique to each one of us. But this detachment is what occurs as a part of ourselves remembers its higher essence. We don't often see that. Sometimes when someone's dying, you see that light appear in their eyes. That memory starts to come to them even while they're dying, and they start to, usually just before the end. In many cases, they completely let go, and then this light appears in their eyes and a sense of calm and peace as that memory starts to kind of sift and come back into their, little remnants of it come into their awareness. And so the Bardo sequences they're mysterious and magical, and there are many things I could say about them, and many things I don't yet remember myself. But there's this process that has a really sequential, logical unraveling as we move towards our death. And therefore, what's really important is to keep a really clear intention, purity of heart, a deep sense of trust, openness, so that whatever we feel as we're dying, whatever fears come up, we just allow them that space. We just allow them to drop away. We give them the crucible so that they can just be dropped, and then we can move towards, the light. We can move into that higher body, and that is what will guide us into our next incarnation. So it's why the Tibetans, for example, and the Egyptians, those people did these practices at death in order to guide the spirit strongly into a kind of a good body, a good life, to cleanse karma as quickly as possible in that very delicate stage between lives, because there are many, in those borderline states, there are many things that can happen. There's a lot of acceleration that can happen, if you like. So opportunities for cleansing and purifying ourself as we let go. And also to, when you turn inwards and you contemplate, it's the same process. You can go through this process of letting go of the dross of your life, and letting go of which you don't need, those attachments, and then the focusing on the higher, on the pure, on the siddhi. That's the same process as we turn inward to contemplate. It's the same process as death. So contemplation in itself is a perfect preparation for death. And the more we do it, the more we attune to those frequencies, and we sift, and we allow the negative to just fall away, and then we allow the higher essence to shine through, then the more we're preparing for death.